every age, there is a cause worth fighting for. But in the future, the greatest threat to our survival will not be man at all.
Hello, welcome to the Damien and Devlin Show, and this is our review of Starship Troopers, the 1997 film directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring Casper Van Dien, Dina Myers, Denise Richards, Clancy Brown, Michael Ironside, and Jake Busey, to name a few. This was a science fiction film that came out and was a moderate success, but it should have been a lot bigger a success in my opinion. Now, it did go on to have some sequels and animated things because it kind of grew into a cult following. Fortunately, people didn't go see it when it first came out, but as, you know, video, DVD came out, people started discovering it, and it kind of got a cult following. In fact, I think a lot of people are actually endeared to this movie. Damien chose this movie, and I'm glad he did, because I was a big fan of it too. I got to see it opening night, and I saw it a couple times at the theater, and I rewatch this movie every couple of years, and I always enjoy it. And it's not a perfect movie, but it's an enjoyable movie, and I'm impressed, because the movie is over 20 years old now, and it holds up surprisingly well.
I absolutely adore this movie. I was 6 years old when it first came out, but I don't think I saw it till around the 1999 range, because the movie came out in 97. I remember first being introduced to Starship Troopers by accident on YTV, which is like a Canadian kind of kids slash preteen, early teenager kind of station. Shows a lot of cartoons and whatnot.
I was about to say, they didn't show this movie.
No, they didn't show the movie. In the early 2000s, like you said, the animated show came out, and it was Starship Troopers, The Roughneck Chronicles, or something like that. And that's how I discovered Starship Troopers. And when I wanted to know more about it, I found out that it was based off this movie, and I immediately got my mom to buy me the VHS and basically watched it over and over and over again, almost to the point probably where if I'm remembering this correctly, the VHS started to not work. You know how when it kind of got like that corroded kind of feeling? Yeah, you could tell which parts I watched over and over because it would have those kind of noises going on, and the picture would need tracking.
The shower scene?
Not the shower scene.
Sorry. Yeah, you would have been the action sequence.
Yeah, that's right. So this movie I've loved since my childhood. It definitely has inspired me. It has made a huge impact on not only my future military career, but as an adult now, it actually has influenced the way I view politics and things like that, which I'll go into later. But overall, I love this movie. I have a lot of good things to say about it. There are some things that I don't like about the movie, which I will get into, but overall, phenomenal. I'm inventing words because I'm just so endeared by this movie. Fantastic and phenomenal movie.
Yeah, the movie is about basically a group of cadets, and you see their lives from pretty much high school to where they go, and they all wind up in this war with these bug, alien type things. I guess it's bug. They say bug about...
They call them the arachnids, basically.
Yeah, but I wish they'd call them the arachnids more, because they use the word bug way too much. In fact, don't do a bug...
It's like a slang term.
I know, but don't do a drinking game with this, because you'll be on the floor halfway through.
Bug!
But we'll get to that later. This movie was based on a novel by Robert Heinlein.
Heinlein, yeah.
Right. And it was a very famous novel, and I think one of the reasons why it turned off a lot of people is they took kind of a more pretty boy kind of view. At the time when this movie came out, Beverly Hills 90210 was one of the hottest shows on TV. And a lot of people criticized it for kind of going that route by showing all these like romances and stuff like that, where sci-fi books, you know, this is supposed to be like a top military sci-fi book, and I guess people didn't expect all these like triangles and stuff like that. I actually liked it. I was a big fan of Beverly Hills 90210. So they do cast it with a lot of pretty people, but overall, I think they get the job done, and I think it is. But when I saw this movie, I said, this was inspired by Beverly Hills. First successful, really big hour-long show about teens, and you can see it was.
I want to be clear. I like the love triangles and all that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Beverly Hills 90210. I just want to be clear.
Oh my God! Yes.
I just want to be clear on that.
We don't want him to get mixed up with that. Anyhow, so why don't you start us off with your positives?
All right. So my positives. Everybody watching so far that knows me, and even if you don't, you're about to find out, anything really with a good kind of militaristic style, I find myself attracted to. I want to know more about it, especially when it's based in a sci-fi setting. For some reason, I've talked about this before, humanity pitted against some unknown force, an alien, in this case bugs, there you go, take a shot, arachnids. I just am attracted to that kind of trope. Whether it's Starship Troopers or, Aliens, where they're facing the xenomorphs, even Predator, War for the Planet of the Apes, things like that. I love it. And that definitely is a positive for me, because it literally makes me feel like if there is this foreign entity, aliens or whatever, it gives me hope that humanity would band together under one single force and work together to try and survive, basically. So I love that about the movie. I do love the action scenes. The action scenes are absolutely phenomenal. You pointed out so many times, like, this is visually stunning. And it is true. And you know what? For a 21-year-old movie, right? 21 years old?
Yeah.
It came out in 97. 21. Yeah, 21. It looks, I said during the movie, it looks like it came out last year. In certain, like, obviously some of the things are a little dated. Some. Not a lot, though. Like, the majority of them literally look like
computer
they came out last
screens
year.
was the problem I had with, and that I'm okay with.
Like, I still think that some of the green screen set pieces that they have are just so well done that it looks like they're meshed into that world, and you can't really tell they're standing in front of a green screen in some instances, in my opinion. So the visuals hold up fantastic. I think the music is fantastic as well. I've talked about James Horner. I've talked about other composers like John Williams. The composer for this, I actually have the soundtrack for this as well as Basil. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Either Basil or Basil Polidorus. I think he's Greek or something like that. But just his main Klandathu theme when they first land on the planet. It gets my hair standing up on the ends of my arms. It makes me worried for these troopers going down there, because it just has an emotional feeling. And even when dramatic things happen in the movie, just certain notes in the music, they hit me, and I'm just oh, that's such fantastic orchestral work going on there. I love the characters. Casper Van Dien as Johnny Rico, who in the novel is they're all from Argentina, basically. Most of the characters, the three main characters, are from Argentina, so they're supposed to be of a Southern American kind of descent. However, they're more Caucasian in the movie, but in the novel his name is Juan, Juan. Because I know of the novel and the movie, I kind of sometimes, when I make fun of it, I call him Wani Rico, because he's nicknamed Johnny by his friends. Just a little insight to me. But I love the characters, so I love Johnny Rico. I love his best friend Ace Levy, who's played by Jake Busey. I loved Denise...
Richard?
Sorry, no, not Denise Richards.
Dina
Meyer. I love Dizzy, who's a guy in the novel, by the way.
And also was on Beverly Hills 90210.
That I did not know. But I love all those characters. And I love just the dynamic, especially when they're in boot camp and they build those friendships, and then they start, going further and further along in their military career in the war against the bugs. Take a shot. So I just love the characters. There are some characters that I don't love, and I think he and I are going to agree on this one. But overall, I do enjoy them. Acting, Casper Van Dien, I think, while he does come off as a little cheesy at times, it is a satirical movie. If you really think about it, it's a satire. And I think those cheesy moments are in there for a reason. But Casper Van Dien really nails the role of Johnny Rico in this. As well as Jake Busey. I said at one point, I think Gary Busey's greatest contribution to film was Jake Busey, because I love Jake Busey in his role here as Ace. And for Walking Dead fans, the actor that plays Father Gabriel is actually in this movie. And
for Golden Girls fans, Rue McClanahan is in there too.
There's like a who's who. Michael Ironside. Oh my gosh, I love Michael Ironside. He is phenomenal. Not only does he play Lieutenant Radjack, but in this movie, but he also, just a fun fact as well, he voices one of my favorite video game characters, Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell series. So I love Michael Ironside. And so on and so on. Just the actors in this. Even though Denise Richards is in this, and I'm going to have more to say about her character later, I do like Denise Richards' performance in this. I was actually talking to him about it because we previously reviewed American Satan, where she kind of just phoned it in, and I said it's nice to see her actually acting for once in this, so that was refreshing. I do have problems with the script, but overall it was a pretty enjoyable experience.
I will give a shout out to the director, Paul Verhoeven. He does a great job. As Damien said, this movie holds up incredibly well. The action sequences look good. The special effects look good. It all comes together really incredible well, because usually a 20-year-old movie, you'd start seeing some things. But no, they actually did a good thing. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they cast fairly unknown people, or they casted soap actors. Patrick Muldoon was from Days of Our Lives. They have some Y&R people in here. And I think they cut the budget by not casting any real name stars, but, you know, Clancy Brown, Michael Ironside, great actors, but they weren't really well known. But I think they put all the money towards the special effects, and I think it really shows here, and that works good. Now, Paul Verhoeven, he directed another movie called RoboCop, which actually has a lot of similarities to it. There's a lot of parodies in this. There's little jokey cartoons. I think some of it is played like a satire, like you say. I don't think all of it is, but when they do the cartoons, not the cartoons, the commercials.
The cartoons.
Yeah, they're not cartoons. Maybe later. They do these commercials that are so over the top, making fun of propaganda, whether it was American or German or any kind of war propaganda. It's very funny, and I've noticed you said it a couple times. Do you want to know more? Because he said that, and I've wanted to interrupt him. So these commercials are great, but in RoboCop, he did the exact same thing because it's a futuristic society. Paul Verhoeven actually had a really strong career in science fiction, because RoboCop's another phenomenal film. The original is awesome. I think he did a couple other ones, and then a movie came along that kind of sideswiped him called Showgirls, which I think was his follow-up. And yeah, I will be showing Damien that one day. And yeah, as much as I love Showgirls, I think it kind of ended his career in some ways. But Starship Troopers, he should be that in RoboCop and some of the other things that I can't remember right now. He actually showed some incredible potential.
That one Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Total Recall. Yes, that's the one I kept thinking. Another great science fiction movie. For some reason, he decided to do Showgirls, and that was it.
The original, not the remake with Colin Farrell.
Yeah. Apparently, Paul Verhoeven did all the originals. He did the original RoboCop. He did the original Total Recall. And if they're talking about rebooting this, so he did the original one of this. Other things I liked. I did like a lot of the actors in this. As I said, I like that they cast lesser-known people, but still interesting choices. Like, suddenly Rue McClanahan's in, playing this weird thing with glasses thing. This woman with glasses.
Well, she kind of looks like a thing.
I know.
She kind of does.
You know, and I kind of like that. It just made it fun. Like, you know, Gerald Ford's son is in this. Stephen Ford, who was a Y&R actor. Young and the Restless, for anybody who doesn't know that. And so it's like he took chances on it because he was... Like, because when you see the big battle sequences, which is my next positive, they are absolutely phenomenal. The set pieces are huge. And it looks great. Like, when you see all these bugs coming at you.
Take a shot.
Yeah, it's just a huge, like, you can see, like, you get chills because it's like we're being surrounded, and it doesn't look phony and stuff like that. When I first saw this movie, I wasn't certain on the look of the bug, because it moves so much that you really don't see it. But as I've watched it so much, I actually really like the bug. just so he wouldn't do that again.
You guys are going to be plastered by the time this review's are over.
But anyhow, I really like the look of the bug, even though I like more traditional, like, stuff like Alien or something. I would have liked them to go for that. But we'll get to that, my negatives, why. But I like that the villains, I think you mentioned this, the villains, they don't just play them as like creatures. There's actually a story. In fact, I kind of am saddened that they didn't get to do a really good sequel, because the sequels we won't even talk about because they're hit and miss. But if they did a really good sequel and Paul Verhoeven came back, I would have liked to see more of that intellectual, because as the movie goes along, you find out there's a lot more to these anachrids and arachnids. I'm just going to say bug, just because I'm avoiding people, actually drinking to this. So anyhow, I actually, it's too bad that they didn't go more into that, but I like how it develops. And again, the development of the story is great. I like when you see them as, they really pull off the fact that they're like students and they're green. Yep. And you see them actually develop. In fact, all of them pretty much develop. You see them as, hot-headed teens or, lustful teens, and how they develop by life's achievement. This movie almost puts you out of breath of how much they actually accomplish in the short time it is.
It's true. There's really barely any room to breathe in this. Not to steal your thunder or anything, but while you're talking, another positive that came to my mind is the uniforms, as well as just the attention to detail with regards to like military ethic and whatnot. There are basically Starship Troopers, the novel, has been required by certain actors on certain war movies to read so that they can understand the military a little bit better. That's how authentic it is. Now, I've never read it, so I can't actually give that 100%. I'm just going off of what I've heard. But the movie itself, there are many moments where it does feel like I am legit watching an actual military, because they compose themselves very much like a military. They act like a very well-oiled machine. Some of the tactics are a little questionable. For a fact, like there's no real formations going on. They're kind of just one congealed mass of humanity. So that aside, with the military decorum as well as how they address each other, I find it very, very authentic, as well as this is one of the only military movies, besides like maybe Saving Private Ryan, to not use the stupid Hollywood cliche of over and out on the radio. When they're done talking, they say out, and that means that I'm done talking. Like there's no response necessary, I'm done. And that, to me, whenever I watch a Hollywood war movie and they say over and out, it just bothers me because it's two different meanings. Over means I'm done talking, I want a response. Out means I'm done talking, I don't need a response. So the fact that even just little things like that make me happy as somebody that was in the military. So the uniforms I like a lot. They're very World War II reminiscent of Germany. With regards to like the mobile infantry's uniforms are all gray.
Very much so.
So they very much look like the Wehrmacht from World War II, which was Germany's like main military force. Carl, who's played by
Neil Patrick Harris. Which we didn't even mention was in this movie.
A young Neil Patrick Harris. Their uniforms, they're supposed to be the military intelligence guys. Their uniforms are 100% the SS. Like, go look up an SS uniform and then look up Neil Patrick Harris in Starship Trooper, his outfit there. That's an SS uniform. So lots of nods to like Nazi Germany.
Star Wars did that too a little bit. Not to the same effect, but they use it. Yeah,
definitely the Empire. But like even when they're talking about like the politics in like the main Federation, the way that they shoot it is very reminiscent of like the Reichstag from those time periods. So it's so influenced off of that. Not to say like that's a positive of mine. I just like that kind of foreshadowing because the government itself is fascist and things like that. But it's not fascist in an evil way. So it can show you that fascism doesn't necessarily have to be evil. I've gone on a little bit. Sorry to steal your
No, that's fine. Do you want to start your negatives?
I do. So yeah. I'm dying to talk about this. But I talked about how much I liked Denise Richards' performance in this. Her character, Carmen, I cannot stand. I said so many times during the course of this movie, she does not even know what the word loyalty means. I'd be surprised if she knows what the word loyalty even exists. That's how fickle she is with regards to people. She doesn't care about Rico. She doesn't care about Xander. She's just using people, it seems, left, right, and center, and she's so annoying. And you actually told me a story about when you were in the theater, when people thought that something happened to her in the movie, there was applause.
Yeah, I've never seen so much hate for a character. They booed her a couple times for reasons I won't go into. But she was actually booed. I've never heard booing that often in a movie theater.
Yeah, no. But her character is just nothing against Denise Richards. She does it perfectly.
Yeah, it's the character, the way it was written. It's again, it's not her fault. It was the writing.
Not at all. So there's that. Some of the special effects are dated. There's a sequence where there's a spaceship or a shuttle flying to a bigger ship early on in the movie when Carmen's actually flying it, and it does look dated. Although it does fit in well with the late '90s, like it still looks decent, but it still looks a little dated. Some of the plot as well doesn't necessarily make sense. For example, just this attention to detail, I pointed it out to him. I was like, pay attention to this. But Denise Richards' character gets wounded at a certain point, and then basically shrugs it off and forgets that she has it.
It's a major wound,
It's a huge, major wound, and then she's fine. She's fine. Who cares? I've got full range mobility of where I was wounded. I'm using every piece of my body, so you don't know exactly where she was wounded. But she's got full range mobility. She's able to, like, do things that she shouldn't be able to. So that bothers me. And then just, I don't know why, but I always find the final act of the movie just to be a little underwhelming. Because it's this big operation.
That's a great observation.
It's a little underwhelming. It's this big operation.
Just don't give it away.
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna. I'm expecting this big thing to happen. They're going to do this thing in particular. It's constantly mentioned. This is your mission. This is your mission. And I'm expecting, I'm going to see this happen. And then it deviates. And then we're suddenly following, like, not the big battles that we have.
Yeah, a big plot point we don't actually see. It's not seen on screen.
And so it's underwhelming to me. So I have to give it a little bit
that's
a slap for that.
A fair assessment.
But I'll leave the rest to you.
Oh, anything else?
For now, no.
The only really big problem I have, and I agree with some, so I'm not going to repeat them. I did have problems with the Denise Richards character. I think some of the characters, like, I think they were all well acted, but I think the script kind of betrayed them in some ways. I know they had to accomplish a lot, but overall I think they hit the emotional mark. But one thing I do have to say is I thought the script was good as far as developing the characters and moving them along, even though there were times where it's like, wouldn't they be really devastated here? But not really.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem I have with this script is the dialogue. You know what? Starship Troopers has some really moments that I think could actually be a really serious film. But the problem, why I think it became a cult classic, is there is dialogue so bad in this that it comes off like a bad cult film.
Yes, sir.
Like, stuff like, you know, like every time they use the word bug is like, you're some kind of smart bug. Or, I like the way you kill bugs. Or, it's bad. And that's why I kept saying, I wish they used what is it? Anacrid? Apparently I can't say it. Arachnid, yes. And I was like cringing, but it also makes me laugh because it makes me enjoyable, but it takes me out of the film because I think, wow, if they had better dialogue, this movie could have been like an epic movie. And it is still pretty epic, but then you get hit with like, you know, we're going to go kill some bugs this morning. Yum, yum. You know, and it's like, really? But there's some great lines in this. And that's why it feels almost like they had these great lines of dialogue. And then everybody, once in a while, somebody said, you know what? We need a really cool line here. And they don't work. But if you want to giggle, they work. And that's really... yeah, I'd just be repeating the stuff you said that I had. So, and actually, the conclusion I never really even thought about. But yeah, it is kind of a disappointment because it's a main storyline that we actually like. Oh, here's the resolution. All right.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't like that. Like, I understand why they did it, but they could have done that and then done the actual.
Absolutely.
Like, there was time.
Yeah, their big finale was a smaller subplot. Yeah.
So, overall...
So you wanted to get into some...
I did want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Those of you that are fans of mine, I know I have maybe one or two.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to talk about this movie because I was actually talking about the government in this movie with a friend of mine named Shannon. And she actually has done a lot for this channel too, so I actually wanted to use this time to actually thank her for sending some subscribers our way. So thank you so much, Shannon, for that.
Thank you.
But she was actually talking to me about this movie because she'd never seen it. So we got talking about the government. And this government, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, it's called I think the United Citizens Federation or something along
like
those
that,
lines.
Yeah. Network.
No, that's just the network.
Oh, okay.
That's
sorry.
just the network.
I'll
But
shut up.
it is a fascist government. But if I had to be completely honest with you, if I could choose any video game universe or any kind of movie universe to live in, I would want to live in the Starship Troopers universe for the government alone. Reason being, let me explain. There are two types of people in this world. There's citizens, and then you have civilians. Citizens are people that have the right to vote. They have the right to do certain things that civilians do not, because they've given time to the federal service. So they do military time, or they volunteer to do hard labor, things like that. But they earn their citizenship, they earn the right to vote, things like that. Civilians, no discrimination at all against civilians, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. Nobody thinks any less of them for not being citizens. They just don't have the power to vote. As well, in this universe, and you and I agree with this, you need a license to have children. Now, in this day and age, in real life, you need a license to have a dog, but
Catch a fish.
to catch a fish, to own a gun, but you
Any idiot
don't
can
need one to have a child. That to me just doesn't make sense. As well as anybody can vote. Whereas we look at like the United States election, I'm not going off on a Donald Trump rant here, but most people in the States, they threw their vote away voting for a dead gorilla named Harambe. Like, what is that? Like, for the memes, for the LOLs, like, what are you doing with your vote? Whereas in this government, in this movie, you have to earn the right to vote, and I think that's more of an advanced system. It also talks about, in the movie, it mentions it very briefly, the failure of democracy and the rise of this government by people that took force and overruled it, and there's been peace for generations across the world. And that would never happen in our society. So the fact that the entire world has come under a single banner, and you know what, yes, it is a fascist government. Yes, they do basically employ their citizens through use of federal service. But you know what? There's no discrimination. There's more progressiveness in this government than I could say in this day and age. You have co-ed showers where people can commingle and whatnot. There's active women in the workforce. You see the top military official in the movie at one point is a woman. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of progressiveness. There's no racism whatsoever. So I love this government, and if I had to live in it, I would live in that universe, and that's just me. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Before we get to our ratings, for my one or two fans out there, they would know, anybody who knows me knows that I can't do a Starship Troopers review without mentioning one of my favorite scenes in the movie, the whipping scene.
Oh, gosh.
Now, you just gave something really awesome. Now I'm going to be totally shallow. There's a whipping scene that I know a lot of my friends are giggling because it's like, yeah, he had to bring it up. Mm-hmm. It's a little homoerotic. I'm not complaining at all. I enjoy it way too much, but I also think it's well done. It's very realistic, and you feel it. You feel it. So even though I have mixed feelings about it, let's leave it at that. I like it and I hate it. Let's get to my review. I just had to say that for my fans.
All right. Well, based off of my positives as well as my negatives, overall, I have to give it a 4. I do enjoy the movie a lot. It's definitely in my top 10 movies of all time. But there are some drawbacks to it, I'll be fair. But overall, I love this movie. And it has impacted me a lot as a young man and definitely as an adult as well.
When Damien brought up this movie, I think he was quite happy to know that I was actually a big fan of this movie. And watching it again, I still love everything about it. Even the cheesy dialogue makes me laugh and stuff. I'm going to go a little higher, 4.5 for you for this. Because this is just a fun, entertaining movie to watch. In fact, if they got rid of the boobies and the nudity and the violence, this actually could have been kind of a new Star Wars generation. But I'm kind of glad they kept it R because it's pretty faithful to it. And so I'm going to give it 4.5.
Also, maybe you didn't know this, but that Power Rangers series that came around 3 years later,
Lost Galaxy.
Lost Galaxy used the props from Starship Troopers.
Yeah, you can see the actual soldiers' outfits because I'm rewatching that right now.
So there you go. What did you think about Starship Troopers? Have you seen it? Have you seen any of the sequels? I hope not. But you know what?
Watch them after you see the original.
Them after, or you know what? Don't even watch them at all. But it's up to you. It's up to you. There's a line. My favorite line from any movie or TV show ever is in this movie. Basically, it's talking about free will and choice. I think I've quoted it in other reviews. But make up your own mind. What did you think? Let us know. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? But we always want to know what you're saying. Do you want to live forever, apes? Because if you do, follow us, find us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, and subscribe. We always love having you around. Thank you so much. We will see you next time.
Starship Troopers.